News, current affairs, facts and opinion. Their future in our hands. Markets, globalist technocrats versus the people. A line in the sand. The McIntyre Report.
Hi, and welcome, folks. Jeremy McIntyre on behalf of the McIntyre Report. And independent media, unlike mainstream media, apparently we're just conspiracy theorists. Mainstream media, of course, they only ever tell you the truth. Every day, mainstream media wakes up with dedication and praise to God that they only ever tell the truth. Of course, that's right, because they told you that COVID was going to be the biggest, baddest pandemic since the Spanish flu. And modelling by Bill Gates at Imperial College, by Neil Ferguson, in UK, told us 160,000 Australians were going to die a little over 2 years ago. Within the space of the next 3 or 4 months, if we don't lock down our entire economy, destroy small businesses, put a diaper on our face, and not allowed to go more than 5 kilometres from your house to exercise. And if you do dare post on Facebook that you might attend a protest rally, then even if you're a pregnant mum, the Victorian police, of course, would never arrest you and drag you out of your home in front of your family, because that would never happen in Australia. That would only happen under the world if it turned into the Great Reset. Now, the Great Reset, of course, if you listen to mainstream media, is a conspiracy theory as well. Now, that's despite the fact the Great Reset has a book on it, and despite the fact that Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, which must also be conspiracy theory as well, because, of course, none of these things are true that independent media talk about. The Great Reset by Klaus Schwab. You know, that conspiracy theory, despite the fact that he tells people regularly, and it's recorded on video, which you can prove that's actually factual and evidence, there's not a conspiracy theory, but of course it is. Because mainstream media told us it's a conspiracy theory. That same conspiracy theory where Klaus Schwab, his mum was Rothschilds, and he's a Nazi, tells us that you'll own nothing and be completely happy. Are you buying that gibberish? Are you buying that new form of global communism where you'll own nothing and be happy? Hey, if you and I own nothing, and Klaus Schwab and other billionaire elites, will they own everything and perhaps be really sad about it? Because if we own nothing, who owns everything? I'm going to possibly, of course it wouldn't be them. I imagine billionaire elites like Bill Gates, George Soros, Klaus Schwab, and other nutcase psychopaths that really believe in what they're saying, and climate change is the greatest thing, that's crisis that's facing our world today, and that's only because COVID is apparently over and no longer a serious threat. Tell us that you'll own nothing and be happy, and that's a good thing. I'm not sure about you. Are you happy if you own nothing? Or do you think you might be a little bit happier if you owned a lot more than you currently do? So are these billionaire elites, I imagine, that Bill and Gates Melinda Foundation, Bill Gates worth $140 billion, up $20 billion from his profits from COVID. But of course, he's not in the vaccine industry to make money. $20 billion isn't really money for Bill Gates. Just because it might be money for you and I, just because he made $20 billion in the last 2 years from the vaccines, a 20-to-1 return on his investment he boasts about, but he's not in it for money. And these dangerous conspiracy theories out there that are just, he's outraged. How dare people think he's in this for money? Just because he made $20 billion is not that much money for Bill Gates, correct? So we shouldn't assume that because he made $20 billion in the last 2.5 years out of the COVID pandemic, largely from his vaccine investments that he boasts about on mainstream media, a 20-to-1 return, that it's about money. Because possibly it's not just about money. Maybe it's about the Bill and Melinda Gates Institute for Population Control, what it was called, before they changed the name to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Maybe it's about more than money. Maybe he's actually right. Maybe it's population control. But that's conspiracy theory, isn't it? Seen and heard anyone. They're perfectly necessary because this big bad COVID pandemic that told us millions, tens of millions, and hundreds of die. It's going to be like to die in the first 4 months. After too long, only 81 people according to the official stats in Australia, she died of COVID. 81. I don't want to spread fake news. 83. I'm stand corrected. I've just been informed. It wasn't 81 people over 2 years. Despite the fact 1,500 people normally die of the flu every year in Australia alone, over 60-odd thousand in America, only 41.5 died in 2020 and 2021, despite we were told it's going to be the most dangerous pandemic since the Spanish flu. But 83 people died in 2 years. Oh, no, Jamie, but there was 2,500 died with it. Oh, okay then. Even then, is it really the most deadliest? It's just a conspiracy theory to highlight such facts. But how many died in January this year? Excess mortality up 22.1%. Just after everyone had their double dose and they started rolling out the third dose, get your booster, because the first two vaccines work so well, you now need a booster. And of course, whatever they say must be true. It wouldn't be a conspiracy theory. I mean, why would we ever be concerned and have any vaccine hesitancy just because it's a phase 3 medical trial pushed upon the population without any testing? Oh, sorry, I'm saying correct. It was tested on animals, which all happened to die, but they're just animals anyway. Who cares? Just don't tell PETA. I mean, it's animals, right? Just because they died of the vaccine doesn't mean when they inject it into your child or your 6-month-old baby that the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, wants you to inject your baby with a phase 3 medical trial just because it's killed a few people, really. I mean, come on. These aren't that deadly. Rarely reported on TV. It's not on mainstream media, people dropping dead one every 15 to 30 minutes in Australia, 1 to 4 to 8 seconds around the globe. I mean, that's just a conspiracy to suggest that. Just because the stats in Australia, government data, highlights that excess mortality in January this year, 2022, was up 22.1%. That relates to about 2,857 excess deaths. My God, I could have COVID. I hope I didn't spread COVID everywhere. Be careful. Turn off your TV now. Do not watch fake news channels and conspiracy theory channels such as Independent News. Go back to CNN, BBC, Channel 7, 9, 10, and ABC in Australia, because only they are the official channels, and that's all you should really listen to, because they would never lie to you. They'd only ever tell you the truth. They told you that excess deaths jumped by 2,800. Only 83 people had died solely of COVID in the 2 years in the biggest, baddest pandemic before that. But in a single month, after people were double dose and triple dose, 3,000 Australians dropped dead of a heart attack, stroke, and other accelerated cancers, all adverse reactions to the vaccine, but nothing to do with the vaccine. Just because it's the only common denominator. And just because it was just 1 month, it could just have been an anomaly. Just maybe people decided to have a heart attack. Shane Warne had a heart attack. Just because he had a heart attack and dropped dead after having his third dose of an phase 3 experimental trial, don't dare say that it had anything to do with the vaccine. It had everything to do with his fasting, doing a juice fast. Those juice fasts are really deadly. Shane Warne just dropped dead. Not only did Shane Warne just drop dead, there's people that apparently dropping dead from gardening now. Oh, you've got to watch out for climate change. It's going to cause young people to have heart attacks. Now, of course, it's got nothing to do with the phase 3 medical experiment that was injected into people's arms. If you didn't take that, you didn't get to go to a restaurant, you're banned from society and you lose your job and you starve to death. Just because you're mandated to take these phase 3 medical trials that have nothing to do with population control, despite the fact that 76% of the Brisbane doctors' patients that were pregnant all had a miscarriage, and when he reported it, they tried to delicense him and ban him for telling the truth. That's got nothing to do with it. Vaccines are perfectly safe and effective, and they really stopped COVID. Like before we rolled them out, we had hardly any COVID. Actually, there was people dropping dead in every street corner. It was that bad. I mean, of course you would have seen people in your own street drop dead of COVID by now. Is that true? Have you seen? There must be. Surely it's the biggest, baddest pandemic. Half your street's probably dead by now of COVID. They'd just be dropping dead. No, I didn't. Maybe it's just my street. I was lucky. But 2,857 Australians dropped dead above the average in January this year. But what about February and March and April and May? Well, actually, it's up to 16.1% increase up until May 26 this year. We haven't got the figures past that yet, but I just suggest it's probably going to be about 15,000 excess dead Australians by the time it gets up to the September quarter. Dead from COVID, perhaps? Or it couldn't be, because only 83 died of COVID before that in 2 years. The only thing that changed was the COVID vaccine rolled out. But let's not try and link just people having heart attacks, strokes, just dropping dead, fit, healthy people, ex-cricketers even, sports stars. I mean, just because 700 dead athletes in the last 2 years have dropped dead on the sporting field from a heart attack doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the vaccine. Now, just because the ones that dropped dead had the vaccine doesn't mean it's the vaccine. We've got to stop these anti-vaxxers spreading the truth. It's causing vaccine hesitancy, and it's causing people to lose faith in the institutions, of the government institutions, and in the mainstream media. Actually, ratings are down. Apparently, it's all over for mainstream media. I just saw this recently. Let's have a look here. Mainstream media, apparently their ratings are down. Let me see if I can find it because we don't want to talk fake news. Here it is. Apparently, the talk shows, their ratings are plummeting. I don't get with Australians because these people would never be paid to lie to you. I mean, Channel 9, Channel 7, Channel 10, Hoshi and co. Why would ratings be down? I mean, that's where we go if we want to know the truth. If we want to know what's going on in the world, because these TV hosts are really intelligent people that can say whatever they want. I mean, why would they lie to us? Why would they, just because Channel 9 and Channel 7 and Channel 10 get paid tens of millions of dollars by the government and by Pfizer and co. to push the vaccines and cover up death and injury of the vaccines, doesn't mean that they would push them upon you, because they would disclose that, I'm sure across the bottom, go, this is not a news show, this is an advertorial for Pfizer or Moderna. You know, it's interesting because Pfizer was losing a battle. Moderna and AstraZeneca were one of the first few vaccines, especially AstraZeneca, that was rolling out in Australia. And Pfizer was pretty upset with the Australian government, did a deal with AstraZeneca. How dare they with their competition? So AstraZeneca was winning, you know, just because people were getting strokes and dying didn't really bother them because, you know, you just don't report that stuff. You don't need to. Who's checking? Who's counting? Not the government. They're too busy selling you and flogging you deadly vaccines. But then, to be outbeaten, Pfizer decided to add in a bonus heart attack. If you get the vaccine instead of AstraZeneca, come over and take the Pfizer one, we'll throw in a bonus heart attack. But not to be beaten by Gates' Moderna, they decided to do a deal with Bunnings that not only will you get a free heart attack, a bonus stroke, but if you go to Bunnings and get your injection, you'll also get a free Bunnings sausage. So really, I don't know why anyone didn't get vaccinated. I mean, these incentives, if you're in America, you would have got free Krispy Kreme donuts. So I can't believe anyone didn't. But according to Greg Hunt, our former Australian Health Minister, the anti-vaxxers, there is no debate because 95% of Australians were vaxxed a year ago. No statistics to back that up. Despite the fact that if you wanted to vaccinate 95% of Australians, even you brought in the military and strapped people to the bed, you still wouldn't find 95% of Australians to vaccinate. So it's physically impossible to vaccinate 95% of the population. But these governments would never lie with statistics. Just because Bill Gates' number one favorite book is lying with statistics doesn't mean Bill Gates and the World Health Organization that he controls and owns with his vaccine cronies and the Rockefeller Institute, which he models his Gates Foundation Institute on, would ever lie to you about statistics. I mean, just because they told us 160,000 people were going to die of COVID in the first 4 months, and it turned out only 83 did after 2 years, doesn't mean we should not trust their figures. Just because they locked down the entire country, entire state, and banned you from crossing the border to see your loved ones, and forced you to take a jab that's now killing everyone with heart attacks, but not allowed to talk about that, doesn't mean we should take these things seriously. Anyhow, folks, I'm going to go to an ad break right now, and we're going to be back with some more to talk about more things on independent news, which you shouldn't listen to. You should only listen to Channel 7, 9, 10 in Australia and what the government tells you, because the governments never lie, politicians never lie, and mainstream media would never, ever lie to you. Is that true? Never would they lie to you. So, folks, we'll be back in just a moment. Let's take a look at this ad, and whatever you do,
a new social media platform, truthbook.social, built by the people, for the people, a force for good. Powered by the Australian National Review, non-for-profit news media company built by the people for the people as well. And also, the platform will be known as ANR Social. Censor-free and blockchain protected, it combines the best of YouTube features for uploading videos, Telegram and Facebook. To combat the censoring and banning of those who speak the truth, and those who are seeking the truth, truthbook.social will be everything Facebook isn't. Now is the time in human history where the resistance fights back against global tyranny and the globalists and their Great Reset totalitarian agenda. truthbook.social, and anrsocial.com.
News, current affairs, facts and opinion. Their future in our hands. Markets, globalist technocrats versus the people. A line in the sand. The McIntyre Report.
Well, welcome back, folks, to independent media. We are not mainstream media, so don't listen to what we have to say, because only the truth comes from Channel 7, 9, 10 in Australia, or the ABC. Never would they lie to you. And CNN, BBC, the bastions of truth. But if you want to go for a walk on the wild side and discover some other things, let's go and have a look what's happening in the world. This is what Ukraine used to look like. And this is what Ukraine will soon look like. Ukraine seems to think they've won the war because Russia retreated from the Kharkiv region. But foolish people do foolish things. Despite all the weapons sent in by the West and NATO, Ukraine is continuing to get their butts kicked. And Russia is defending its borders quite well, maybe perhaps expanding their borders. But let's face it, Eastern Ukraine, people say they stand with Ukraine. I say to people, which part of Ukraine do you stand for? The Western Nazi side of Ukraine, or the Eastern Ukrainians that are being slaughtered for the last 8 years of a civil war funded by the US State Department and NATO and the West, and even our taxpayers' money, because our Anthony Albanese didn't go and see Putin. He didn't remain neutral and partial. Like, why should Australia be a neutral country when we can dive right in there with the murderous Westerners nations and give our Bushmaster armored vehicles, which are not that useful for anyone, but running over kangaroos perhaps, to Zelensky and the puppet Zelensky. But anyhow, Ukraine will shrink. Poland's waiting to take the West, and Russia is going to take the East. So that's what's happening in the world there today. Germany and Europe have found new ways to create economic suicide. Germany's decided to agree with America's sanctions on Russia, the same sanctions that were planned before the unprovoked invasion by Russia. They say it's unprovoked, but I'm just confused. Maybe you can help me here. Unprovoked invasion. But hang on a minute. There was a report released in January. The unprovoked invasion by Russia didn't occur to February 24th. Newly leaked report from RAND Corporation reveals the true motives behind European destabilization and the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And let's look at that a little bit further. And here we have it. Let's read it. This is in January, the RAND report, which is RAND is a deep state organization that provides strategic advice to the Democrats, the deep state, the CIA, NSA, and the current White House administration, which also, and George Soros, one of the Western elites, billionaire oligarchs, globalists, was involved in overthrowing a democratic elected president in Ukraine in 2014 by an armed coup, an illegal coup, working with the Democrats as well, because George Soros, the billionaire's foundation is called Open Society Foundation, and he just decided to partner with the US to export democracy to Ukraine in 2014. Therefore, they did an illegal coup to boot out the democratic country of Ukraine and the president, and tried to kill him, and then brought in Poroshenko, who then was replaced by a comedian. Yes, you can't write this stuff in Hollywood, by a comedian that played with his penis on stage, called Zelensky. And Zelensky now, despite being Jewish, works with the neo-Nazis and has for 8 years, well, not just him, but others, murdering Eastern Ukrainians. And we're told to stand with Ukraine. Do we stand with the Eastern Ukrainians being slaughtered by neo-Nazis in the military in Ukraine, or should we stand with the neo-Nazis? I'm confused. Maybe Anthony Albanese, our Prime Minister, can help. But let's look at this. This was planned in January. This is very interesting. The RAND report, the West strategy. Due to coalition constraints, the German leadership is not in full control of the situation in their country. This is called a controlled crisis. They have to create a controlled crisis, apparently. Thanks to our precise actions, or even admitted, it's been possible to block the commissioning of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So Germany, a country that has an industrial powerhouse that has become very wealthy because they get lots of cheap gas energy from Russia, decided to go along and allow that cheap energy source to be banned. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline from Russia to Germany, the US asked them to don't license it, don't allow it. Why? Maybe because they'd have to pay $100 million for an LNG tanker right now per tanker to send gas because they're not allowed to get cheap gas from Russia because that would give Germany an advantage over America. Despite the opposition of lobbyists from the steel and chemical industries, however, the dramatic deterioration of the living standards may encourage the leadership to reconsider its policy and return to the idea of European sovereignty and strategic autonomy. The only feasible way to guarantee Germany's rejection of Russian energy supplies is to involve both sides in a military conflict in Ukraine. Hang on a minute. Weren't we told by Channel 7, 9, 10, ABC, CNN, BBC, and the papers that it's an unprovoked invasion by Russia, yet the RAND deep state organization working with the United States and the CIA, etc., and the Democrats said the only feasible way to guarantee Germany's rejection of cheap Russian energy supplies is to involve both sides in a military conflict in Ukraine. Our further actions in the country will inevitably lead to a military response from Russia. That unprovoked response from Russia will obviously not be able to leave unanswered the massive Ukrainian army pressure on the unrecognized Donbass republics. Unrecognized, well, depends who's recognizing them. That would make possible to declare Russia an aggressor. The unprovoked Russia that apparently invaded Ukraine, but this was planned in before February. Was it unprovoked? Of course it was. Mainstream media told us it was. The government told us it was. Zelensky told us it was. You mean that comedian puppet that's now a puppet? Comedian, perhaps? Our further actions in this country will invariably lead to military response from Russia. Russians will obviously not be able to leave unanswered the massive Ukrainian army pressure in the Donbass. This would make possible to declare Russia an aggressor and apply to it the entire package of sanctions we've prepared beforehand. Wow. So it was unprovoked. How come they had sanctions already planned to go in against Russia before Russia even walked across the border to protect its borders? Interesting. Putin may in turn decide to impose limited counter-sanctions, primarily on Russian energy supplies to Europe. Thus, the damage to EU countries will be quite comparable to one of the Russians, and in some countries, primarily in Germany, will be higher. The prerequisite for Germany to fall into this trap is the leading role of green parties and ideology in Europe. Wow, you mean that they would dare use the green parties and the green zealots because they're so dumb to fall for a trap and destroy German, commit economic suicide, and Germany fell for this? Nah, that couldn't be possible. I mean, just a conspiracy theory, despite it being in a document by the RAND report designed for a strategy for the West before the war. Very interesting, isn't it? The German Greens are a strongly dogmatic, if not zealous, movement, which makes it quite easy to make them ignore economic arguments. Wow. That sounds like in Australia too. The Green Zealots and the Labor Party and the Greens parties just seem to ignore the economic challenges. Now, if people want to turn off, if people want renewable energy and want to demonize coal, great. How about we shut down all the coal stations, power stations and hydro, shut it all down right now, and or how about we make it fair? Those who don't like coal-fired power stations, how about they cancel their electricity account right now, and they go and use firewood and candles and go back into the dark ages. And the rest of us are prepared to be grateful for cheap abundance of coal and other natural gas energy sources, etc. And there's nuclear there that could be used if you ever wanted to be good to the environment. And we'll choose and let people vote. Turn off your lights now if you're really a greenie. But that's interesting. How many greenies in Australia are only pretend greenies? Have they cancelled their electricity account yet, I ask? Have any of the greenies cancelled electricity account and only use candles and turned off their fridges, turned off their microwaves, their stoves, bought a tent, and only use recycled water and don't use a car? I mean, is there any greenies in Australia that really do that? No, because they're bullshit greenies. They want to dictate and lecture what we should all do, but they're not willing to do it themselves. Interesting, isn't it? Don't worry, folks, but the world's not going crazy. It's perfectly moving along quite well because 1,000 schools now. According to Klaus Schwab, the Great Reset, of course, it's just a conspiracy theory. You'll learn nothing and be completely happy, and you won't eat any more beef because you'll be eating bugs and insects. That's just a wild conspiracy theory. Just because 1,000 Australian schools have introduced eco-friendly chips made from edible insects doesn't mean that the conspiracy theory is true. Very healthy, very good for you, despite the fact we're not meant to eat insects. And also our schools are going great in Australia. Now the really important issues that face us all, not from your parents having a heart attack and your children having heart attacks and strokes from the vaccine, because it doesn't kill anyone, remember? Just because one Australian's dying every 15 to 30 minutes more than used to after the vaccines are rolled out, doesn't mean they're dying from the vaccine, okay? It just means, because if it's not on TV, it's not true. Don't listen to us here at Independent Media because we're paid to lie to you. Is that right? We receive millions and millions and millions of dollars from no one. But it doesn't mean we don't lie to you. I mean, because we clearly have an agenda here at Independent Media. Is that true? We must have. I mean, why would we tell you the truth? How dare you get access to the truth? We can't have that. Only Channel 7, 9, 10, and ABC, CNN have the monopoly on the truth, remember? Pronouns. Can you believe this? Australian schools. Let me see. Okay, so if you're a she, but you're a tomboy, but you don't have a penis, that's okay because you can pretend to be a boy, or you don't have to pretend anymore. They'll do transgender operations paid for by the Liberals pushing in the left, loony left, and you can now get a penis. I don't know. I know a lot of girls that were tomboys when they're younger. I'm pretty confident that they're glad they didn't have a sex operation funded by the left-wing nutcases in our government and have a sex change and get a penis. I mean, being a boy, if you're a girl, is probably not that good of an idea. If you're born a girl, I have some bad news for you. Or good news. You're a girl, okay? Sorry, you're a girl. If you're a boy and born a boy, you're a boy. Hopefully you become a man and grow up and not have a mental weakness called transgenderism. But we can't say that because that's not politically correct. Bad boy. I take that back, retract it. Just because you have a mental weakness doesn't. Sorry. Transgenderism, of course, is perfectly healthy to cut off your penis and create yourself a vagina, or vice versa, at a young age and make those serious lifelong decisions, because what could possibly go wrong when you're mature and want to make your decisions on your own accord without being brainwashed or manipulated into something. But anyhow, that's another topic. Of course, the Greens will never get it wrong. Maldives, according to the Canberra Times, that's one of those truthful newspapers that would never lie to you. The Maldives in 2018, by 2018, he's going to be underwater, and we need to rescue those people. That's 2008. Now we're in 2022, and the Maldives seems to be doing quite okay. But doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It mightn't happen overnight, but it will happen. Why? Because the same people that told us to eat bugs and insects and you'll own nothing, be completely happy. Yes, that's Klaus Schwab, the Rothschild mother, son of the Rothschilds, Nazi, billionaire elite, wants you to own nothing and he'll own everything and you'll be happy. Told you also that climate change is the most threatening crisis along with the COVID pandemic. Oh my God, I got a sniffle. My God, I better go rush to hospital right now and get some remdesivir and put on a ventilator because I could have COVID. Just because the PCR test kit can't accurately detect COVID, never has been able to, doesn't mean just because I had flu-like symptoms, it's not COVID. Clearly it's COVID. And remdesivir, just because it was a banned Ebola drug for killing 54% of trial patients, doesn't mean just because Gates and Fauci, out of the goodness of their heart, nothing to do with making money again, fraudulently had it approved to give it to so-called COVID patients that kills a healthy person in 6 to 10 days. Just because it kills a person in 6 to 10 days doesn't mean they died of remdesivir. It's clearly they died of COVID because COVID's really bad. Just because all the people in aged care homes that were already dying were counted dying of COVID doesn't mean we fudged the figures. We clearly didn't. We would never lie to the populace about COVID figures. 5 million clearly died. No one died of the vaccines, but 5 million died of a flu. Yeah, but how do we test for the flu? Don't ask difficult questions. Yeah, but the PCR test has been debunked. Move on, folks. This is not independent media. This is mainstream media. We're going to lie to you, folks. All right, so we're going to tell you the truth. Truth is, you'll never die of the COVID vaccine. You'll never have a stroke, never have a heart attack. And all those athletes haven't been dropping dead, and it's perfectly okay. Go back to your mind-numbingly idiot box on Channel 7, 9, 10, and everything's okay. The world's not going into a financial crisis. There is no global elites. There's no bunch of really rich people that try and control our governments and try and push agendas such as the Great Reset. It's just fantasy. It's just a Hollywood script. Let's ignore it. Who are these people? Oh, sorry, we can't mention that. Oh, these are people that don't exist. That's the Rockefellers and Rothschilds. They have $1 trillion between them, but hey, it's a bunch of poor people trying to run the world and manipulate things. That's I don't even know why I put that up. That's got nothing to do with them. Let's not offend those dear families that do so much good for the world. What else is happening in the news space before we wrap up for today? Massive protests in Prague against the Europe supporting the Ukrainians. I thought everyone was against Russia, but don't care about protests just because the people upset doesn't mean anything. You won't see this on mainstream media. Why? Because it's not news. The last thing we want to know is the globalists don't want people knowing that people are protesting. What else is happening? Well, no one's dying. Just because a Facebook group set up on Facebook died suddenly, news jumped up to nearly 200,000 members in a couple of weeks before Facebook deleted it. I don't know why they want to delete that, just because people finding out that hundreds of thousands of people are dropping dead of heart attacks and strokes and might somehow link it, deduce it's from the phase 3 experimental drug that killed all animals was tested on before it was rolled out around the world. What could possibly go wrong? Of course, it's got nothing to do with the vaccine. No, it doesn't. And don't dare refuse to be vaccinated, you teachers out there. Teachers, you're meant to be the loony left. Loony left all signed up and already got their 4th dose, waiting for their 5th booster. But how come there's some teachers that refusing to take the vaccine? Bad teachers, we need to punish them and study in Queensland. Well done, Queensland government, for teaching these teachers a lesson. If you don't take drugs and drugs injected straight into your system with a needle junkie and don't become a drug junkie and a good example for students, then we're going to dock your pay. What are you coming to? What do you think this is? Fauci's going to step down for some reason. Right before the Republicans are expected to take control of Congress and commence investigations into his funding of the Wuhan lab and pandemic response. No, I just think he's ready for retirement. Nothing to do with those things. What else is happening in the world? Oh, forget that. It's just because independent news channels and journalists get pulled aside and harassed now in Australia doesn't mean we're moving towards a communist police state. That's just nonsense to suggest that. What else is happening? The net worth of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, has grown significantly. It's from 2019 up to 2022. Joe Biden's gone from 9 million to 41 million, and Kamala Harris from 6.3 million up to 28 million. They only earned several $100,000 in their role, but I guess over 3 years, several $100,000 well invested has increased their net worth by 4 to 5 times. Doesn't care if you can't add up. They can't either. And what else is happening? Do you regret not taking the deadly experimental COVID vaccine? There's a few people that didn't take it in Australia. According to Greg Hunt, the former federal health minister, only 5% because anti-vaxxers clearly lost the debate. Do you regret taking it? 94% said no, never regret not taking it. 5% said yes after seeing how many are dying and can't wait to shoot up with this lethal injection. And 1% said maybe. So there you have it. If you haven't taken a COVID vaccine, run out now. It's been proven to be perfectly safe. Now, people are switching to alternate social media platforms, particularly Rumble, Gab, and Truthbook.social, and BitChute. Wonder why they're leaving Facebook. Fakebook or Fascist Book, Instasham, and ScrewTube. I just don't understand why people would want to leave them. But if you think no one's dying, that's perfectly okay. New Zealand, a town of can't even pronounce that town, but it has 13,107 people. Sorry, did have a small town and a pleasant drive through a peaceful cemetery disrupted by truckloads of freshly laid graves. Very suspicious. Why is there so many new graves in this New Zealand town and most towns around the country? I'm not really sure why, but it's nothing to do with the vaccine. I'm pretty sure of that. But we should do some investigations. Perhaps no, just skip over that. It couldn't be from the vaccines. God knows. Could be, maybe, I don't know. Anyhow, things are working really well on those sanctions against Russia. Prices in Russia have dropped down dramatically. They have the best performing currency in the world. The economy is strong, running a massive current account surplus. Unlike the UK and the West, which is imploding because those sanctions are really working at destroying Russia. Well, that's just fantastic to hear. And here's your dear friend Klaus Schwab. His Reptilian Cookbook coming out soon. Take advantage of that. You'll own nothing, be completely happy eating bugs and insects. Surely is going to work very, very well for everyone. Transgender father of 2 awaiting gender reassignment surgery, sent to male prison after being exposed as a predatory pedophile who targeted girls as young as 6 and took upskirt photos of 7-year-olds. It's got nothing to do with pedophiles. It's transgender. It's just mean. Very mean to suggest that, Jamie. And that's all we have for today's episode, folks. We'll be back with some more fake news and independent media. Whatever you do, don't tune in to us. Only watch Channel 7, 9, 10, or CNN, BBC, because they would never lie to you. They'll only tell you the truth. And God damn it, no one's died of the vaccines. Just because excess mortality is up by 16.1% to May 26 this year, and it means one person extra is dying every 15 to 30 minutes from a year ago, doesn't mean it has anything to do with the common denominator these people are taking is the vaccine. Okay? Just because barely anyone died of COVID doesn't mean COVID wasn't really deadly. I mean, if they didn't do the lockdowns, how many more people would have died? And if you're only taking 3 vaccines, that's why some people are still dying, because they should have took the 4th one. Just because they died after 3 and didn't get the chance to take the 4th is the reason they did die, because they stayed alive long enough to get the 4th dose. They would have been safe. So it's their fault for not taking 4 vaccines. They only took 3. Just because 3 killed them is not a good enough excuse. So quickly run out there and get your 4th one, because you're going to need your 5th one before Christmas, because you want to catch up with your family, especially those unvaccinated family friends, and then spread deadly spike proteins with them and try and wipe them out as well. That would be a great Christmas. Anyway, that's all for the news today, folks. We'll be back with some more. Whatever you do, don't watch any of our ads, and don't support Australian National Review and independent media because we don't tell you the truth. We're just talking conspiracy theories.